The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Martha Wilkins' prized garden. At 78, she still tended to her flowers with the same care and devotion she had shown for decades. Her wrinkled hands gently caressed the soft petals of a newly bloomed rose, a smile playing on her lips as she remembered planting this particular bush with her late husband, George. The tranquility of the moment was shattered by a deafening roar from above. Martha looked up, shielding her eyes against the glare of the setting sun. Her mouth fell open in astonishment as she beheld a massive, gleaming object descending from the sky. It was like nothing she had ever seen before, a colossal ship that defied all earthly design. As the alien vessel touched down in the empty field adjacent to Martha's property, panic erupted in the small town of Willowbrook. Car alarms blared in the distance, and Martha could hear the shouts and screams of her neighbors. But rather than join in the chaos, she found herself rooted to the spot, curiosity overriding fear. The ship's hull seemed to ripple and shift, mesmerizing patterns dancing across its surface. A hatch opened with a hiss of escaping air, and Martha's heart raced as she caught her first glimpse of the beings emerging from within. They were tall, easily 7 feet in height, with bodies that seemed to be a blend of organic and mechanical parts. Their skin shimmered with an iridescent quality, changing colors subtly as they moved. Their eyes, large and almond-shaped, glowed with an inner light that seemed to pierce through the growing twilight. The leader of the group, distinguished by intricate markings on its chest, stepped forward. Its gaze swept across the landscape, taking in the quaint houses and neatly trimmed lawns of Willowbrook. When those alien eyes settled on Martha, she felt a shiver run down her spine. But Martha Wilkins was not one to cower in the face of the unknown. She had lived through wars, personal losses, and the ever-changing tides of society. This, she decided, was just another of life's surprises to be met with grace and perhaps a touch of her famous hospitality. Straightening her back and smoothing down her floral apron, Martha took a deep breath and called out, "Welcome to Earth. You must be tired after your long journey. Would you care for a cup of tea?" The alien leader tilted its head, a gesture that seemed both curious and confused. It turned to its companions, a series of clicks and whistles passing between them. Martha waited patiently, her hands clasped in front of her, a serene smile on her face. After what seemed like an eternity, the leader turned back to Martha. Its mouth opened, revealing rows of sharp, metallic teeth. But when it spoke, the voice that emerged was surprisingly melodious, with an accent Martha couldn't quite place. "Tea," the alien repeated, the words sounding foreign on its tongue. Martha's smile widened. "Yes, dear. A nice, hot cup of tea. It's just the thing after a long trip. I've got some lovely chamomile that should do the trick. Why don't you and your friends come inside? I've just baked some scones as well." The alien leader, Crix, though Martha didn't know its name yet, seemed to consider this unexpected offer. Its companions shifted restlessly, their hands hovering near what Martha assumed were weapons at their sides. But something in Martha's demeanor, her unwavering kindness in the face of their intimidating presence, seemed to intrigue Crix. After another moment of deliberation, it nodded slowly. "We will accept your offer of tea," Crix said, each word carefully enunciated. Martha beamed, clapping her hands together in delight. "Wonderful. Follow me, dears. Mind the rose bushes as you come through the gate." As Martha turned to lead the way to her cozy cottage, she caught sight of her neighbors peeking out from behind curtains and around corners. Their faces were a mix of terror and disbelief as they watched their elderly neighbor calmly escort a group of alien beings towards her home. Little did Martha know that her simple act of kindness was about to change the course of human-alien relations forever. As she busied herself in the kitchen, preparing tea and arranging scones on her best china, the aliens awkwardly settled themselves in her quaint living room, their towering forms dwarfing her floral-patterned furniture. The stage was set for an encounter that would challenge preconceptions on both sides and perhaps, just perhaps, bridge the vast gulf between two vastly different civilizations. All it took was one brave, kind-hearted grandmother and her unwavering belief in the power of a good cup of tea. Martha hummed softly to herself as she carried a tray laden with teacups, a steaming teapot, and a plate of freshly baked scones into her living room. The sight that greeted her was both surreal and oddly endearing. 5 towering alien beings perched awkwardly on her floral sofa and armchairs, their metallic skin shimmering in the warm light of her antique lamps. "Here we are," Martha said cheerfully, setting the tray down on the coffee table. "Now, let's get you all sorted with some nice hot tea." Crix, the alien leader, watched with fascination as Martha poured the amber liquid into delicate china cups. The aroma of chamomile filled the room, mingling with the sweet scent of freshly baked scones. "This is tea?" Crix asked, carefully accepting a cup from Martha's outstretched hand. Martha nodded, her eyes twinkling. "Indeed it is. Chamomile. It's wonderful for relaxation. Go on, give it a try." Crix raised the cup to its metallic lips, its glowing eyes never leaving Martha's face. The other aliens watched intently, their own cups held uncertainly in their large hands. As Crix took a sip, its eyes widened, the glow intensifying. "This is pleasant," it said, sounding surprised. "It produces a calming effect." Martha beamed. "I'm so glad you like it. Now, how about a scone to go with your tea? They're best with a dab of clotted cream and jam." As Martha busied herself preparing scones for her unexpected guests, she couldn't help but notice the tension slowly easing from their postures. Crix, in particular, seemed to be relaxing, its sharp features softening as it savored the tea. "Tell me, dear," Martha said, handing Crix a scone, "what brings you to our little town of Willowbrook? It's not exactly a popular tourist destination, you know what I mean." Crix hesitated, exchanging glances with its companions. After a moment, it spoke. "We are explorers. Our mission is to seek out new worlds, to understand different life forms." Martha nodded, settling into her favorite armchair with her own cup of tea. "Well, you've certainly come to the right place for understanding. There's nothing like a good chat over tea to bring folks together, wouldn't you agree?" One of the other aliens, a slightly smaller one with intricate patterns swirling across its skin, leaned forward. "You are not afraid of us?" it asked, its voice tinged with curiosity. Martha chuckled. "Oh, I wouldn't say that. You gave me quite a start when you arrived. But fear never solved anything in my experience. It's much better to approach the unknown with an open mind and a warm heart." The aliens exchanged looks again, clearly taken aback by Martha's candor and kindness. Crix set down its teacup, fixing Martha with an intense gaze. "Your response is unexpected," it said. "Our data suggested that humans would react with hostility to our presence." Martha raised an eyebrow. "Well, I can't speak for everyone, but I've always found that a little kindness goes a long way. Now, why don't you tell me more about where you come from? I'd love to hear about your home." As Crix began to describe their distant world, with its twin suns and crystal forests, Martha listened attentively, asking questions and expressing wonder at the alien landscapes being described. The other aliens, encouraged by their leader's openness, began to chime in with their own observations and questions about Earth. Hours passed, filled with conversation, laughter, and several more pots of tea. The aliens, initially stiff and formal, gradually became more animated, their curiosity about human culture growing with each passing minute. As the night wore on, Martha found herself regaling her guests with stories from her long life, tales of love, loss, and the simple joys of tending her garden. The aliens listened with rapt attention, seemingly fascinated by the emotional depth of human experiences. It was well past midnight when Crix finally stood, towering over Martha's small form. "We must return to our ship," it said, a note of regret in its voice. "But we are grateful for your hospitality, Martha Wilkins." Martha smiled warmly, rising to her feet. "It was my pleasure, truly. You're welcome back any time for more tea and conversation." As Martha showed her alien guests to the door, she was struck by how much had changed in just a few short hours. What had begun as a potentially terrifying encounter had transformed into a delightful evening of cultural exchange. Crix paused at the threshold, turning back to Martha. "We came seeking understanding," it said softly. "We did not expect to find friendship." Martha reached out, patting Crix's metallic arm gently. "Sometimes, dear, the best friendships are the ones we never saw coming. Safe travels and don't be strangers." The following days in Willowbrook were a whirlwind of activity. News of Martha's unexpected tea party with the aliens had spread like wildfire, attracting the attention of government officials, scientists, and curious onlookers from around the world. But amidst the chaos, Martha remained a calm center, continuing her daily routines and welcoming her new alien friends for regular visits. On this particular morning, Martha was in her garden, tending to her prized roses when she heard the now familiar hum of the alien ship approaching. She straightened up, wiping her brow with the back of her gardening glove, and smiled as she saw Crix and two of its companions making their way through her gate. "Good morning, dears," Martha called out cheerfully. "You're just in time. I was about to take a break and have some lemonade. Would you care to join me?" Crix's metallic features shifted into what Martha had come to recognize as a smile. "We would be honored, Martha Wilkins. Your earth beverages are intriguing." As they settled onto the patio of furniture, Martha couldn't help but marvel at how quickly she had grown accustomed to the aliens' presence. Crix, in particular, seemed to have developed a genuine fondness for human customs and was always eager to learn more. "Tell me, Martha," Crix began, sipping the lemonade cautiously. "What is the purpose of these colorful plants you tend to so carefully?" Martha's eyes lit up. "Oh, these are my flowers, dear. Roses, to be specific. They're not just beautiful to look at, they also have a lovely scent. Here, why don't you take a closer look?" She guided Crix to a particularly vibrant red rose. The alien leader leaned in, its glowing eyes focused intently on the delicate petals. Suddenly, a small sound of surprise escaped Crix as it detected the rose's fragrance. "This is remarkable," Crix said, wonder evident in its voice. "On our world, plants are primarily functional. The concept of cultivating them for aesthetic pleasure is novel." Martha chuckled. "Well, that's one of the joys of being human, I suppose. We find beauty in the simplest things. Speaking of which, I've been meaning to ask, what sort of art do your people create?" This question sparked an animated discussion about alien aesthetics. Crix described intricate light sculptures that responded to thought patterns, while its companions chimed in with tales of musical compositions that utilized frequencies beyond human hearing. As they talked, Martha noticed a small crowd gathering at the edge of her property. Neighbors and visitors alike watched in fascination as the elderly woman and the aliens engaged in animated conversation. Among the onlookers was Dr. Evelyn Chen, a cultural anthropologist who had been sent by the government to observe and document the interactions. She watched in awe as Martha effortlessly bridged the gap between two vastly different species, her warmth and genuine curiosity breaking down barriers that formal diplomacy might have struggled with for years. As the afternoon wore on, Martha introduced the aliens to more Earth customs. She taught them how to plant seeds, explaining the cycle of growth and the patience required to nurture life. Crix and its companions were fascinated, their metallic hands gently pressing seeds into the soft earth under Martha's guidance. "You know," Martha said as they worked, "gardening teaches us a lot about life. It's about nurturing, patience, and sometimes accepting that things don't always go as planned, but there's always next season to try again." Crix tilted its head, considering Martha's words. "This philosophy, it is not unlike our approach to space exploration. We must adapt, learn from failures, and persist in our quest for knowledge." Martha beamed. "Well, would you look at that? It seems we're not so different after all." As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the garden, Dr. Chen finally worked up the courage to approach. "Excuse me, Mrs. Wilkins," she said tentatively. I'm Dr. Evelyn Chen from the Cultural Exchange Initiative. I was wondering if I might join you and your friends for a chat. Martha smiled warmly. Of course, dear. The more the merrier. Crix, would you mind if Dr. Chen joined us? She's interested in learning more about our conversations. Crix regarded Dr. Chen with curiosity. We welcome the opportunity for further exchange. Please join us. As Dr. Chen took a seat, barely containing her excitement, Martha couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Here she was, a simple gardener in her twilight years, facilitating a dialogue that could shape the future of human-alien relations. The conversation flowed easily, with Dr. Chen asking thoughtful questions about alien culture and sharing insights about human society. Martha watched with satisfaction as the aliens and the scientist found common ground, their initial awkwardness giving way to genuine engagement. As night fell and the stars began to twinkle overhead, Martha realized that something truly extraordinary was happening in her little garden. Seeds of understanding were being planted, not just in the earth, but in the hearts and minds of two vastly different species. Little did they know that this peaceful exchange was about to face its first real test. For back on the alien ship, not everyone was as open to this newfound connection with humanity. A storm was brewing, one that would challenge the fragile bond forming between Martha, Crix, and their two worlds. As the alien ship hummed quietly in the field outside Willowbrook, tension filled its sleek, metallic corridors. Vex, Crix's second-in-command, paced back and forth in the command center, its bioluminescent markings pulsing with agitation. The other crew members watched nervously, their own lights flickering in response to the charged atmosphere. "This is unacceptable," Vex hissed, its voice a harsh contrast to the ship's soft ambient sounds. "We came here to study these humans, not to befriend them. Crix has lost sight of our mission." Zara, the ship's chief scientist, stepped forward cautiously. "But Vex, the data we're gathering from these interactions is invaluable. We're learning more about human culture and behavior than we ever could through distant observation." Vex whirled around, its eyes flashing dangerously. "At what cost, Zara? Our leader spends more time in that human's garden than on our ship. We're soldiers, explorers, not gardeners and tea drinkers." The door to the command center slid open with a soft hiss, and Crix entered. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to the leader. Crix's posture was relaxed, a stark contrast to the rigid stance it had maintained before their encounters with Martha. "I sense discord among you," Crix said, its voice calm but tinged with concern. "Speak your minds freely." Vex stepped forward, drawing itself up to its full height. "Crix, with all due respect, this mission has strayed far from its original purpose. We were sent to assess the humans' potential as allies or threats, not to engage in cultural exchange over baked goods." Crix's bioluminescent patterns shifted, reflecting its thoughtful state. "And what have you concluded from our interactions, Vex? Are these humans allies or threats?" Vex hesitated, caught off guard by the question. "They're unpredictable. The elderly female, Martha, she showed no fear. But the others, they watch us with suspicion. We cannot trust them." Crix nodded slowly. "Your caution is noted, Vex. But consider this, through our interactions with Martha, we've learned more about human resilience, adaptability, and capacity for acceptance than any military assessment could have provided." "But sir," another crew member interjected, "what if this is all a ruse? A clever human tactic to lower our guard?" Crix turned to address the entire crew. "I understand your concerns. Our mission is indeed to gather information and assess the human race. But in doing so, we must be open to challenging our own preconceptions. Martha's kindness was unexpected, yes, but it has opened doors we never anticipated." Vex's markings pulsed with frustration. "And what of our superiors back home? What will we report to them?" "That we've been won over by an elderly human's hospitality." "We will report the truth," Crix said firmly. "That humans are complex beings, capable of both great fear and remarkable acceptance, that they have art, culture, and philosophies that rival our own, and yes, that they have the potential to surprise us with their kindness. The room fell silent as the crew contemplated Crick's words. Zara stepped forward again, her voice soft but determined. I agree with Crix. Our interactions with Martha and the other humans have provided insights that go far beyond our initial mission parameters. We're not just gathering data, we're fostering understanding. Vex's posture stiffened. Understanding. We are not diplomats, Crix. We are the vanguard of our people. If we report that these humans are harmless, it could leave us vulnerable to future threats. Crix moved closer to Vex, its voice low and intense. And if we report that all humans are threats without truly understanding them, we could be instigating a conflict that neither side wants nor needs. Is that not an equal, if not greater, risk? The tension in the room was palpable as the crew watched the exchange between their leader and second-in-command. Vex's markings pulsed rapidly, a sign of internal conflict. Finally, Vex spoke, its voice strained. I need time to process this, Pricks. My training, everything I've known, tells me to be wary. But I cannot deny the evidence of our experiences here. Crix placed a hand on Vex's shoulder, a gesture it had learned from Martha. Take the time you need, old friend. But I encourage you to join us in the next meeting with Martha and the human scientists. See for yourself the potential that exists here. As the meeting dispersed, the crew members murmured among themselves, their own beliefs and training challenged by the unexpected turn of events. Crix remained in the command center, gazing out at the twinkling lights of Willowbrook in the distance. The leader knew that the internal conflict aboard the ship was just the beginning. As news of their peaceful interactions spread, both humans and aliens would be forced to confront their fears, prejudices, and hopes for the future. The real challenge lay ahead, bridging the gap not just between two individuals, but between two entire civilizations. As Crix prepared to return to Martha's garden for another session of cultural exchange, it couldn't help but wonder what new surprises awaited. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in its long career as an explorer, Crix felt a sense of hope for a future where different species could come together, not in conflict, but in mutual understanding and respect. The sun rose over Willowbrook, casting a warm glow on Martha's garden. Today was no ordinary day. It marked a pivotal moment in the growing relationship between humans and aliens. Martha bustled about her kitchen, preparing a veritable feast for the upcoming gathering. She had invited not only Crix and its team, but also a select group of townspeople and government officials for a community potluck. As Martha placed a freshly baked apple pie on the counter, a soft knock at the door caught her attention. She opened it to find Dr. Evelyn Chen, arms full of research materials and a nervous smile on her face. Good morning, Mrs. Wilkins, Dr. Chen said. I hope I'm not too early. I thought I might help you set up. Martha beamed. Not at all, dear. Come in, come in. You can start by setting the tables in the backyard. As they worked together, Martha couldn't help but notice Dr. Chen's anxious glances toward the sky. Something on your mind, Evelyn? She asked gently. Dr. Chen sighed. It's just, this is such a crucial moment. The whole world is watching. What if something goes wrong? Martha patted her arm reassuringly. Now, we're just having a nice meal with new friends. Nothing to fret about. As the morning progressed, guests began to arrive. Mayor Thompson, a portly man with a handlebar mustache, arrived with his famous chili. Sarah from the local diner brought her award-winning cornbread. Even old Mr. Gus, known for his skepticism, shuffled in the container of potato salad. The atmosphere was tense at first, with humans clustering together, casting nervous glances at the empty sky. But Martha moved among them, her calm demeanor and warm smile easing their anxiety. Suddenly, a familiar hum filled the air. All eyes turned upward as the alien ship descended, landing gracefully in the field adjacent to Martha's property. A hush fell over the gathering as Crix emerged, followed by Vex, Zara, and two other crew members. Martha stepped forward, arms outstretched in welcome. "Crix, dear, I'm so glad you could make it. Come, let me introduce you to everyone." As Martha led the aliens through the crowd, making introductions, the tension began to dissipate. Crix's genuine curiosity and Zara's enthusiastic questions about human customs helped break the ice. Even Vex, initially standoffish, found itself drawn into a conversation with Mayor Thompson about local governance. The potluck began in earnest, with humans and aliens alike sampling the diverse array of dishes. Crix developed a particular fondness for Martha's apple pie, while Zara couldn't get enough of the spicy chili. The sight of the towering aliens delicately handling tiny forks and plates brought smiles to many faces. As the afternoon wore on, small groups formed, each engaged in lively discussion. Dr. Chen found herself in an animated conversation with Zara about the similarities and differences in their scientific methods. Mayor Thompson and Vex debated the merits of different leadership styles, finding common ground in their dedication to their respective communities. Martha watched it all with a sense of quiet pride. This was what she had hoped for, not just tolerance, but genuine connection and understanding. However, the peaceful gathering faced its first real test when a group of protesters arrived at the edge of Martha's property. Led by a loud-voiced man named Frank, they carried signs with slogans like "Aliens Go Home" and "Protect Earth First." The happy chatter died down as both humans and aliens turned to face the commotion. Vex tensed, its hand instinctively moving toward its weapon. Crix placed a restraining hand on its second-in-command's arm, its eyes fixed on Martha. Without hesitation, Martha walked calmly toward the protesters. "Frank Henderson," she called out, her voice firm but kind. "I've known you since you were knee-high to a grasshopper. Is this how your mama raised you to treat guests?" Frank faltered, his angry expression wavering in the face of Martha's disappointment. "But Mrs. Wilkins," he protested, "they're aliens. We don't know what they want." Martha gestured toward the gathering behind her. "Look around, Frank. What do you see? Do you see conquerors? Or do you see beings sharing a meal, learning from each other, just like we've done in this town for generations?" Frank's gaze swept over the scene, Crix helping Dr. Chen carry a heavy cooler, Zara laughing at one of Mayor Thompson's jokes, Vex deep in conversation with Mr. Gus about gardening techniques. The humanity of the moment was undeniable. Slowly, Frank lowered his sign. I don't know what to think anymore, Mrs. Wilkins." Martha's expression softened. "Then why don't you join us? There's plenty of food, and I dare say you might learn something new." To everyone's surprise, Frank nodded. As he and his group hesitantly joined the gathering, a ripple of relief and renewed energy swept through the crowd. The barrier between us and them had been breached, not by force or argument, but by simple human kindness. As the sun began to set, casting a golden light over the gathering, Martha found herself standing next to Crix. The alien leader's bioluminescent patterns glowed softly in the fading light. "You have done something remarkable here, Martha Wilkins," Crix said, its voice filled with admiration. "You have shown us the true strength of humanity, not in weapons or technology, but in the capacity for understanding and acceptance." Martha chuckled softly. "Oh, we're not perfect, dear. We've got our flaws, just like any species. But at our best, we can come together, learn from each other, and grow. That's what truly makes us human." As night fell and stars began to twinkle overhead, the gathering showed no signs of ending. Humans and aliens alike lingered, sharing stories, laughter, and dreams of a future where their two species might work together in harmony. The events of this day would be remembered as a turning point, not just for Willowbrook, but for all of humanity. And at the center of it all was Martha Wilkins, a simple gardener who had planted the seeds of interstellar peace with nothing more than a cup of tea and an open heart. In the weeks following the community potluck, Willowbrook had transformed from a quiet. As the discussion continued, ideas flowed freely. Plans for cultural centers, joint scientific endeavors, and educational initiatives were proposed and refined. Martha watched with pride as humans and aliens worked together, their previous differences fading in the face of shared goals and mutual respect. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the gathering, Secretary Hawthorne stood. "I came here expecting to negotiate a diplomatic framework. Instead, I've witnessed true diplomacy in action. Mrs. Wilkins, your garden has become more than just a meeting ground. It's a model for the future of interstellar relations." Crix rose as well, its imposing figure softened by the genuine warmth in its glowing eyes. "We came to this world as explorers and potential conquerors. We leave as friends and allies, thanks to the wisdom and kindness of one remarkable human." Martha blushed, waving away their praise. "Oh, hush now. I just did what anyone would do, offered a friendly face and a warm cup of tea. It's amazing what can happen when you lead with kindness." As the meeting concluded and the group began to disperse, there was a palpable sense of hope in the air. The path ahead would not be without challenges, but the seeds of understanding planted in Martha's garden had taken root and were beginning to flourish. Later that evening, as Martha stood in her garden, looking up at the stars twinkling in the night sky, she felt a profound sense of peace. The universe, once so vast and intimidating, now seemed a little smaller, a little friendlier. Crix approached, standing silently beside her for a moment before speaking. "You have changed the course of history, Martha Wilkins. Our two species stand on the brink of a new era, thanks to you." Martha chuckled softly. "Oh, I don't know about all that. I'm just a simple gardener who believes in the power of a good cup of tea and a friendly conversation." As they stood there, human and alien side by side, Martha couldn't help but marvel at the journey that had brought them to this point. From that first startling encounter to this moment of quiet companionship, it had been an extraordinary adventure. The future was uncertain, filled with both challenges and opportunities. But Martha knew that as long as there were those willing to reach out across the vastness of space with open hearts and minds, there was hope for a universe united in understanding and peace. And it all began with a simple invitation. "Would you like a cup of tea?"